electricity is really a concern. Now, we see in the UK the prices are exponentially going up, really, really rocketing up. And we could put it down to, obviously, the war in Ukraine. But obviously, we got the same problems. What we're seeing now in New Zealand is the government pushing for electric vehicles, electric this, everything's going to be electric, even ferries and all sorts of fantastic stuff are going to be electric. Do we have enough capacity? Also, we're heading into drought time this particular summer, so do we have enough capacity? Are we about to go out? So I've got a guru right here. So welcome, Mike. Ette, I say your surname? Ette.
Ette.
Yeah. Hello, Mike, and thank you for coming. What's a bit about
glad to be here.
How come you're qualified to talk about electricity?
So I work for a company called Total Utilities Management Group. We are New Zealand's largest energy broker by number of customers. I've been working for them for nearly 9 years, and the company has been doing this for over 22 years. So we've got some very, very bright people who live and breathe the electricity market.
And I can assure you, folks, I've interrogated this guy before we got on. He does know his shit. So good stuff, and thanks for coming in. So really, just to start with, the UK prices have really, really risen. Is New Zealand likely the same thing to happen here?
Short answer, yes. In fact, we're seeing it happen right now. In the last week or so, Contact have already sent out letters to their customers saying that your price is going up. I expect that the other retailers are going to be doing the same thing. That's in the residential space. For the last probably 2 or 3 years, the prices for the commercial and industrial space have just been horrible.
Now, Mike, what we're seeing in the UK is exponential, right out of the reach of the average person. And that's where dramatic events have occurred, where we've got a new Prime Minister over there and radical actions about to take place. So are we facing the same high levels?
I don't think so. We haven't shot ourselves in the foot quite as badly as what they have. All of Europe was completely dependent on Mr. Putin and his gas supplies. And when he went to war, the rest of Europe tried to do sanctions, and he was the one holding all the cards, and he just cut off the gas supplies.
Well, yeah, that's one relief we've got being tucked down here in the bottom of the world. So that's pretty encouraging. So the other thing is worrying us, and look, just from our viewers' perspective, are we heading towards outages? Because we've struck this before. Our lakes dry up. Everything starts to go bad on us. Are we heading for that?
Welcome back to the 1970s.
Yes.
Yeah, potentially. So in New Zealand, we have 9,000 megawatts of installed capacity, so a lot. We got to within blackouts a couple of times during this winter. So in New Zealand, the big load is in winter. It's not so bad in summer. We're not like Australia where everyone runs air conditioning all the time. Our problem is winter, when people come home, they put the heaters on, they want to cook their dinner, charge their electric cars, all those things.
But aren't we a huge proportion of our electric generation from hydro, which means lakes, and don't they dry up over summer?
They do. Lake Taupo, I was talking to the experts in the office, of the last 10 years, I think it was something like 7 or 8 have been below average.
Record low levels. Yeah.
Low levels, yeah.
And that does supply a few of our hydro dams, doesn't it?
That supplies all of Mighty River's dams down the Waikato River. I think there's 6 of them down there. Yeah. So if the big scary thing is that Genesis have their coal plant at Huntly, that is the only thing that keeps the lights on in Auckland.
Wow. Coal. And that's going to happen this summer?
It's running right now.
Coal is?
Coal has been running the whole way through.
Pete, Mike, I understood that power station was set up for gas.
So the old part of it is there's 4 what they call Rankine units. I think that's the name of the supplier. One of them has been robbed of so many parts it's never going to run again. One was offline. It got brought back online 2 years ago. The other 2 have been running the whole way through. They're able to run on either coal or natural gas. Probably 10 or 12 years ago, Huntly got 2 new gas turbines that got installed out the back, which are gas-only ones. The problem that we have is, thanks to our leaders' captain's call on gas, gas supplies are now very, very short.
Well, I do recall that the Prime Minister in the second week of being in office said all gas is almost shut down. I know the whole of Taranaki was almost brought to a grinding halt.
It was, all new permits, and that is a major issue for two reasons. First one is we've got a reasonable amount of gas out there that we can get to, which will last, the best guess that I understand is about 5 years, but there's no new exploration. The other thing is that the oil companies, they like to know what's going to happen. They hate surprises. And New Zealand was seen as a good place to do business because we had a stable government, we signalled what was going to happen in the market. So if you're saying, in 10 years' time, we're going to stop new exploration.
Well, let me bring you back. So Huntly used to run on gas, and now it's running on coal.
Yeah.
And what you've said that all new... So any existing gas production's okay, is it?
Yeah.
So why aren't they running on gas rather than coal now?
Because New Zealand has a shortage of gas. So Methanex in Taranaki uses about 50% of the Pohukura field, which is the main one. The rest of it is consumed by businesses and home consumers in New Zealand. And the price has gone up significantly.
So those guys are paying more for it, more than the consumer does for electricity. So why don't we pay more for it? Oh, there we go. Your prices are going to go up.
You've connected the dots. That's exactly it.
So why are we burning coal then?
Well, that's what we're left with.
Because I understand coal's getting imported from Indonesia in shiploads. So the cost of freight, the cost of coal, and of course the harm to our ecology, our environment is massive.
Yeah, but if we don't burn the coal, the lights go out.
So we haven't got enough.
It's that simple.
Mike, we haven't got enough gas then.
No, not at all. There's Contact have got what they call a base load, so it should be running all the time. Gas-fired power plant in Taranaki, that's been switched off for about 3 years because they cannot get gas.
So our government have made a policy to try and save our environment, and in fact, that policy is now making us burn coal.
That's it.
And what about those? Isn't coal so much more harmful to our environment than gas?
Well, it produces more carbon out of that. I'm not completely convinced that carbon is the issue that the greenies tell us that it is, but burning gas is a good thing, yeah.
And let's put another perspective. I believe we've got coal in New Zealand, so why aren't we burning New Zealand coal?
Well, if we go back to the 1980s, the early 1980s, just up the road from Huntly was the old Mary Mary power station, which had a bucket line that disappeared over the hill, where they dug the coal up, tipped it in the buckets, and bucketed it across and put it into the power station. 5 minutes down the road from Huntly is massive amounts of really high quality coal.
And I know there's some pits around Huntly, apart from those ones, that have been shut down as well. And this is because of government policy. So the government policy has created more harm to our environment than actually good.
Yeah, completely.
Right. So this is only a small proportion at the moment. But during the summer, we're burning coal now. God, it's not exactly cold or hot. It's quite mild at the moment.
Yep.
So but during summer, that usage will go up or probably down.
It should stay about the same. So historically, our usage of electricity drops over summer, but like you say, the lakes the lake levels drop. We use the water, so it's a fine balancing act in New Zealand. Our hydro has about 6 weeks of capacity. So if there was nothing coming in and we ran purely on hydro, we could last about 6 weeks.
So we had no rain for 6 weeks. We're in big trouble.
Well, not completely, because there's a real balancing act by the generators, and they control the flow of water, and we use coal, gas, wind when it blows, which is never to be counted on, solar. All these things help, but we only have small hydro lakes. If you look at the Scandinavians who have a lot of hydro, their lakes give them about 6 months supply.
Because they're so much deeper. Is that
Deeper
right?
and bigger. That's it.
Yeah, ours are quite shallow in proportion to them, or in comparison to them.
Yeah.
Look, which segues on to my next major issue, which I introduced with, is what's the future hold for New Zealand? Look, I'm just hearing again and again, and incentives. The government's giving people money. Go to electricity. Look, use more, use more. And our population has gained immensely, and they're opening the borders to more population. I can just imagine we're going to actually use a hell of a lot more in the future. Are we future-proof?
No. That's the short answer. So there is extra generation coming online. Contact have got a geothermal plant that's due to go live in 2024. That assumes that everything goes well. There is more wind generation coming on. That's, to my way, it's a waste of time. We need to do more hydro. We need to, if we're going to do this big electrical migration that they're talking about, and a perfect example is if we were to replace every car in New Zealand with an electric car.
That's a good one. Yep.
We would need to double the amount of electricity that New Zealand produces.
Let me just repeat that. So if everybody had electric cars like the government wanted us to, we would have to double the capacity. But currently the plans to build more lakes or stable generation is what? Is it going to do double?
Well, there's no plan to do double. The last really good hydro site down in the South Island got scuppered by the Green Party about 3 or 4 years ago. There was a hydro plan on the west coast. It wasn't huge, but it was going to give the west coast of the South Island some energy security of supply, because they do have a lot of outages over there. That everyone, including the Department of Conservation, said we need to do this, and that got scuppered by some kayakers, I think.
Oh my goodness. So we actually are in trouble for the future.
Yeah.
Because a government policy is telling everyone to use electricity. If we go and do that, we've got no capacity to provide the electricity.
Completely.
Unless we go back to coal or start the gas again.
Yeah. We've painted ourselves into quite a corner here. I was at a conference a couple of years ago, and Megan Woods was laying out her grand vision of electric everything. And her words were, oh yes, well, we've got enough generation to cover most of this, and we'll fill the gap in with wind.
Oh my goodness. And what you're saying, the capacity wouldn't even touch it. We've got to double the current capacity. So it's double the amount of dams, double the amount of everything we've got. Coal firing, everything's got to be doubled.
Yeah.
To have electric cars.
And this isn't my view of the world. This is from Transpower.
Wow. Because I know right now they're importing trucks that'll be electrical. The ferries in Auckland here are going to be electrical. It's going to be massive. I wouldn't mind betting the Cook Strait ferries will be electrical one day. Where does the power come from? Oh, we'll just burn coal, which defeats the purpose.
Yeah, we looked to hire a guy from Australia who had run some numbers on what is your CO2 emissions, and he compared an electric car charged from a coal-fired power station versus a diesel Hilux.
Oh, this will be interesting.
Yeah, the diesel Hilux was way better.
Was more effective, less carbon in the air than burning coal.
Correct.
Well, there you go, folks. There's the wisdom of our government. For goodness sake, that's frightening. Yes. Absolutely frightening. Now the momentum's starting into electrical. It's going to take a lot to stop that and put the brakes on it if we had to. But we're heading into no power.
Yes.
And how many years do you think? I know this is a big question, Mike. You might not be able to answer, but do you reckon in 10 years' time we're in trouble?
Well...
Or 5?
Or 5. Actually, might be next winter we're in trouble. So the winter that's just gone, Transpower had identified 37 nights when they thought we were going to run out of electricity. Next year, I haven't seen their projection, but they were saying that the next 2 years are the crunch point. Potentially after 2 years, when we get some more generation come online, we'll be okay. We won't be so reliant on coal, but that doesn't take into account how many electric vehicles, electric trucks, coal-fired boilers that get turned into electric ones. The government is throwing money around on, they call it their GIDI fund. I can't remember what that stands for. Giddy with power, I think. To convert coal-fired...
Mike, this is frightening. This is absolutely frightening. And we've got a government crazily going into using electricity, but they haven't got any plans or I think what I'm hearing from you, they've got some plans, but not enough to actually to give us enough electricity to cope with what they're planning.
Completely. That's my view of the world.
I want you back. We need to talk some more about this because that's left me on a cliff edge, and there's more questions to ask you, Mike. You coming back?
Absolutely.